Women with birth control and jobs are like kryptonite to men who can only offer their wallet. As women have gotten access to birth control, education, and career, they have gotten more in touch with their masculine side, whereas men have not been pushed to acquire more feminine traits. Watch this.
Balance has swung really dramatically. My kind of like explanation for this, I'm going to trigger the fuck out of your audience today. My explanation for all of this is I view there's like a basket of feminine traits and there's a basket of masculine traits. And for a long time, religious people and red pillars and everybody's kind of coped that like, oh, feminine traits are beautiful and masculine traits are good and they complement each other. But I think deep down, we all know that's fucking bullshit. All the masculine traits are really fucking cool. Having honor, having integrity, being a provider, being able to, stand up for your enemies and for your family and blah, blah. These are like really cool things that everybody wants to do. I think we kind of deluded ourselves into thinking like only men want that. Like women want to be feminine and elegant and caretakers and breastfeeders. And that's like the best thing ever. Not to say that these things are bad. I'm just saying that like in the box of masculine traits, there's like 80% of these traits are things that everybody wants. Nobody wants to be weak. Nobody wants to have to be taken care of. So I think as time has gone on, as women have gotten access to birth control and have gotten access to education and then careers, I think that what we've seen is women have kind of like always had this feminine side. They've done a really good job at growing their masculine side as well. And men have had their masculine side, and that's it. And there hasn't really been a push for men to encompass like more intellectual feminine traits. And so you've got this era now where women have become these like Voltrons of like all these different powerful forces. And now when you're a woman and it's 2024 and you're looking into the dating field and you're like, okay, well, who should I date? Well, you don't need a guy for sex because you have birth control. You're not going to get pregnant every time. And you don't need a guy for money. You can work your own job. So now the value add for a guy has to be really high because before it was like, listen, do you want to be a unwed, unpregnant loser at 30? Or do you want to get with me because I've got a paycheck? And now if you're a guy, a paycheck's not enough, And yeah, I think women with like jobs and birth control are like kryptonite to guys who can only offer their wallet, which is the only thing guys have ever really been trained to do.
An interesting take at the very least, right? I don't agree with most of it. Some of it I definitely agree with, but I want to break it down by points. So one, masculine and feminine traits do, in my opinion, by definition, complement each other, unless they're affected by culture or societal shifts. So things like who makes the money can shift with culture or societal changes. That's true. That's just true. So those are open to argument to some degree due to the shift and changes in culture. And I don't see any other way other than by a shift or change in culture that brings that upon us. Things like fighting, war, or jobs such as a prison guard or working the oil rigs, things like that, even with technological advancements for the most part, it's hard to argue that women should be involved in them to the degree that men are. It's also hard to argue that women want to be. We don't see that. We definitely see more women in police. We see more women in the military. However, if you look at their roles or you look at issues that have come from that, I think it's an arguable point. I think it's very easy to argue that perhaps they're just not best geared for it, for physical reasons as well as some psychological or emotional reasons, because there are differences between men and women. It's just a fact, regardless of what culture says. And I think when we try to blend those things and say there are no differences between men and women, and we put women into men's roles or we put men into women's roles, sometimes it works for sure, but oftentimes it doesn't. Another thing he said was masculine traits are cool. That's a quote. That these things are cool. Feminine traits are, what that means to me is that in some way he's saying feminine traits are in some manner less than those of men. They're less cool, which I totally disagree with. He said being a provider, having integrity, honor, standing up to your enemies and for your family. He said those are masculine traits. Do traditional women, trad wives, whatever you want to call it, do they lack honor or integrity? I would say no. They're doing something that requires honor and integrity, without a doubt. They probably stand up for their families, which is another thing he attributed to men. The only one, even the super red pill, like trad wives, don't do is standing up to enemies for the most part. Again, because I think of things like war, I think of things like police, things within that category. But I'd say that your average feminist is not enlisted in the army to go to war. The only one red pill would fight is providing. The red pill community would fight the providing aspect of what he said. So he's got them on that one. The women are providing for themselves financially in a way that, is abnormal when looking at history. The traditional model, it allows allows any woman the ability to spend the majority of her time with her family, the kids, doing child rearing, which comes with its own challenges. Oftentimes I see people kind of put that down. Like being a stay-at-home mom is in some way less than going out and working a job. I don't agree with that at all. If the women are raising the children, the women are building the culture. In a manner of speaking, the men are building society in this model, right? But in this model, the women are building the future of culture because they're raising the children for the most part, if the man is out of the house most of the time. So it's got its own challenges. There's no doubt about that. But I know I personally would much rather spend most of my life with my kids at home, building culture and building a relationship with my kids rather than work a job, 50 plus hours a week and be stuck there away from my children. I know not all men feel that way. There are men who don't want to be home for sure. Maybe it's relational problems, which is a totally separate thing. If the home is great, the relationship is good, I don't know why a man would not want to be around his kids. Being a mom has challenges for sure. Being a mom is wildly important, insanely important. And so why we downplay that, I don't fully understand. I'd argue though that most women do not want to go to war. They do not want to get into fist fights in a defense context. They do not want to be forced into the workforce at some crap job. There are tons of viral videos going around of women basically speaking out against this whole, why did we do this? Why are we here? Why couldn't I just be a stay-at-home mom? Like, why are things like this? I think we get stuck culturally on the very few women who are out making wild amounts of money and how their life is so good without a man and without a family, being independent. I'd say most women, just like most men, are not insanely wealthy. They're not working a job that gives them financial freedom. They're stuck in a rat race. And so when we divide men and women and create this fake war between the sexes, we just isolate both of them because most women are not financially free and most men on their own are not financially free. Another thing he said was nobody wants to have to be taken care of. I mean, I won't speak for ladies in general, but the women I know do. From they do. They admit it openly. They would prefer that over what they're doing now, which is working a dead end job, hating their life, and still having to deal with the home and raise the kids and do all these things too. It's I don't it's hard for me to understand it. They like the idea of providing stability in the home, healthy home cooked food rather than you being so busy that everything is store bought, it's garbage, it's poison. They like providing emotional support. They like motivating their husband to go out and provide financially or to go out and conquer in some way, right? That's a very traditional thing. Sexual gratification. Plenty of women, they want to provide sexual gratification because they know men are driven that way, just like women are more so driven towards emotional gratification. Men are more driven to sexual gratification. Men should provide the emotional in that context, and women should provide the sexual. Those are huge things that people don't want to talk about because for whatever, but it's reality. It's the world that we live in. It's biological. So it can't just be ignored. They want to raise children. They would prefer to be raising the children. As well as oftentimes in the past, women would actually be the financial bookies, essentially. So the men may be out making the money, but the women are at home doing the accounting. They're doing the budgeting. They're making sure that there is financial stability, as well as emotional stability, as well as just home stability. That's my anecdotal experience speaking with women, is that they enjoy those things. Maybe that's changing. Maybe what I know and who I talk to is outdated. They also women generally, I would say, want to be taken care of in terms of protection and provision because they are taking care of those things themselves in a different context. So without the man, without a traditional model, which is why the masculine and the feminine traits are complementary in nature, because the women are providing in one aspect things like the stability in the home, the healthy, healthy meals versus poison in our bodies and your kids' bodies, emotional support, motivation, child rearing, all that stuff. They're providing all of that. That's a form of provision. Just because men are providing financially does not mean women are not providing. They're providing arguably something that the man would probably not provide as well. It is complementary. They are complementary. If being taken care of is being weak, which is what he said, both men and women are weak because they both, in a way, need to be taken care of, or they both, in a way, would prefer to be taken care of. Men would prefer to be taken care of in the ways I just listed, and women would prefer to be taken care of in most cases financially so that they can provide the other things. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. It's not men are awesome and women are stuck at home not being awesome. Women are at home being super awesome. Or there are other ways of kind of splitting this because we live in a very different economic environment than we used to. Things are kind of different. The primary reason this traditional model, in my opinion, that it doesn't function perfectly anymore or it doesn't function well anymore is because of that economic environment. Most families cannot live off of one income comfortably. They can't do that anymore. It's not feasible for most people. I feel like we have these man and women wars, these red pill, blue pill, whatever wars, within the context again of like people who are in a very small class of human beings who are making wild amounts of money. Like, yes, it doesn't matter what race or sex you are. If you are in the upper percentile, you're going to be fine on your own regardless. That doesn't make sense. If we're talking about the general person, it's a very different conversation, in my opinion. The responsibilities to some degree at this point for most people need to be shared, where women do some working to bring income and men do some housekeeping to keep and maintain stability in the home. An example of making this work, in my view, could be a woman working part-time to cover some expenses, say 20%. A woman is working part-time, she's bringing in 20% of income. That woman then does 80% of housekeeping. And I'm using that as a general form of everything else that maintains your home, including things like child rearing. The man then would work full-time, more than 40 hours in most cases, thus covering 80% of the actual financial income. That man would then, though, be responsible for, in my opinion, 20% of the remaining housekeeping, which is child rearing and cleaning and perhaps cooking. It just depends on your actual dynamic. Then either way, the family is functioning at 100%. And you're still maintaining mostly traditional roles and responsibilities. Now, one more thing. He said, as women have gotten access to birth control, education, and careers, they have gotten more in touch with their masculine side, whereas men have not been pushed to acquire more feminine traits. Women with birth control, he said, and jobs are like kryptonite to men who can only offer their wallet. To me, the argument is a bit inconsistent and it's a bit weak, in my opinion. His focus on men's traits as, quote, really effing cool were provider, integrity, honor, standing up to your enemies, and standing up for your family. The only one women are doing now that they weren't doing back in the day during trad times is providing financially for themselves. Having an education is not a masculine trait. Women who homeschool their kids need to be educated. And you can still fit the full traditional model. So I don't fully grasp the education bit. Most women don't want to be the one who has to physically protect the home in the event of a robbery or something. I would say that's most women. Most women, I would guess, don't want to be forced into the military. Conscription, I would assume most don't, so that they're forced to go into a gunfight with another country. I would bet that. Most women that I've spoken to, so anecdotally, don't even want to work. Again, they don't even want to work. And I think all of these videos of women talking about this is more evidence of that. So yes, most of my opinion on that one is anecdotal from women that I talk to about this stuff. But I also see all of these women on the internet talking about it as well. Maybe it's just my algorithm. I don't know. But this means that men on average are still offering more than just their wallet. They're offering protection, both in the family and society. And I'd argue men have begun to pick up more of the housekeeping to fill in the gap due to women in most scenarios having to work, which is kind of the new model. It's still a mutually beneficial arrangement. And at the level of the masses, again, because most people are not super wealthy and most people can't afford what it seems like a lot of these conversations are referring to is an income that is way above what is normal for people to be able to have the wife stay at home. So it's mutually beneficial. You can still keep the kind of traditional roles intact and you're financially stable. It just has to be done in a different way. Birth control solves nothing for anybody, in my opinion. Obviously, it does. I'm being a bit dramatic about it, but women still need men to have a functioning family. Women still need men if they want children involved in the family. And most men that I'm in circles of only want that within the realm of commitment. So marriage, even though marriage is a joke at this point, at least in the United States. I can't really speak for anywhere else. Women still, in most cases, outside of things like being an OnlyFans star, need men to be financially secure. Meaning having savings, having a windfall, not financing everything, but owning things outright. Women still need men for physical protection. Women still need men if they want physical relationships. Even loose sex requires a man. Women, at the very least, want men for emotional and psychological support. I truly believe all those things. And men need women for emotional and psychological support, for family stability, for physical needs or sexual gratification, and in many cases, also for financial stability. In this economy, again, for things like a savings account, not having to finance everything, but owning things outright. Most people just do need two incomes to some degree to be financially secure, not paycheck to paycheck. And I'd also say that most men want a woman for a woman's touch on the home. And I can tell you that personally. I can't imagine what my home would look like if I didn't have the woman in my life here. She's doing a bunch of decorating right now. So it's a great example. I look around and I'm like, I never would have thought of doing that. Never in a million years would I have thought of doing that. I would be living in just an empty box. It would be wild. And I look around or I come home from work and I see something that she's done and it just blows my mind. It's gorgeous. It makes it feel so much better in the house. It's so impressive to see the things she comes up with and the things that she acquires and brings into the house to make it look better. So I would say most men at least want that as well. It's complementary. So much of this truly is complementary. And then so much of it is compounding, where when we come together and we do this together, it compounds on itself and it becomes something that you could never accomplish on your own. I don't know, I just thought it was really interesting when I was listening to this. If you don't know who Destiny is, I guess I'd call him a political commentator, but he talks about, in the dating circles and things like that too. He talks about all sorts of stuff, but I'd say he mostly does political stuff. He's done debates with Ben Shapiro, Tim Pool, all the major, people in the game. So check his stuff out. He's actually pretty decent as far as someone who holds many of his opinions goes. He seems like a pretty decent guy. So I don't know. That's really it. What do you guys think of that? Is anything I said, do you just absolutely disagree with? Is there anything that he said that you do agree with? I would be interested to hear in some kind of detail why. Because to me, a lot of this section of it, he said a lot of stuff throughout the video, just to be clear and transparent, that I totally agree with. I'm 100% with him on a lot of things. Adversely, though, there's a lot of things he says that I'm like, how can you have that view? But I mean, this is the world now, you know. So, anyways, leave a comment if you can. Explain if you give an answer or if you make an argument. Explain, because I want to be able to actually talk to you, and then do all the YouTube algorithm stuff because it helps. Love y'all.